Welcome to the 100% restoration and remodel of my great-great-grandfather's $7,000 mansion. For today's project, we are going to be down in the basement and we are going to be trying to address these big piles of dirt. I guess what I should say is we want to get these big piles of dirt out of the basement and there's only one way to do it. Actually, I take that back. There are two options. We could carry stuff up and down the stairs with buckets, but we're not doing that. So that leaves us with our other option, which is to cut a big doorway right in the side of the foundation wall, which is what we're gonna be doing today. So for us to get our dirt pile from down here up to here, this is what we need to do. The first thing that we need to do right outside of the house, we have a concrete pad. That concrete pad is going to prevent us from being able to dig beside the house. So we need to come in and remove the concrete pad. With the concrete pad now removed, we need to do a little bit of a supporting in the basement so that way we don't accidentally collapse part of the house. So we need to build some temporary supports going from the main floor down to the basement floor. So we are going to have basically a pole helping hold the floor up. Once we have our temporary support pole in, we are going to remove the basement windows. Once the basement windows are removed, then we are going to come in with a giant I-beam, and that is going to act like a bridge on one side of the house, and it's gonna help hold everything up because we are going to be removing this temporary support. Once the temporary support is gone, then we will be able to come in with the backhoe and the skid loader, and we are going to be able to dig out the dirt, and then all of a sudden, look at this. When we come in with the demo saw, which is our last step, we will be able to dig our hole right through the side of the wall, and then now we have a ramp going down into the basement where we have easy access to our dirt pile.
So step number one, we need to remove this concrete here. We're outside the house and we're ready to chop this slab up into pieces so we can start digging. So what Justin suggested to do next is to find the I-beam that we're gonna use for the opening when we cut out the hole in the basement. That's gonna be our support I-beam, and we need to go to one farm to find it, load it up on the trailer and bring it over here. To bring the I-beam, obviously we need a skid loader that we're gonna load on the trailer, find it over there, load it up on the trailer, leave the skid loader there, and then come back for the skid loader. So you get an idea. Basically we need to bring the I-beam here. Oh, feel that air.
Yeah, that skid loader was nice too.
You know what, this trip might take an hour or so. We're at Kristen's and Rusty's farm, and Cole said we need to look for a building with a steel roof on it. So I guess I'm not sure what building that is where I-beams are, but we're gonna check them out and see if we can find them. Justin said Yahtzee, which means he probably found them. Something like this could work.
That one? Too small. Too rusted. This one.
Look at our setup. We were able to keep the beam on the trailer. It's all pressed down with the forks. It's not going anywhere.
Put your seatbelt on.
We're back with everything that we need. Now gonna get it unloaded.
Okay, we got step number one done, which is getting the concrete out. Step number two, we need to build some temporary supports. Since we are going to be tearing out these windows, the floor joists right above them are no longer going to have anything to rest on. So to keep those from falling down, we need to build a temporary support right here on the inside edge of all of these floor joists. Our temporary support is going to look just like this big beam with the pole holding it up. The only difference is we are going to have a pole on this side and we're going to have a pole on that side, and it is just going to be right in front of the windows. Look at that. We got poles going from the basement floor up to the big beam. We got the temporary supports in. And Justin and Roman got the wooden frames out for the windows. So now we just have bare concrete holes. Justin has the jackhammer. He is now ready to rip out this block that is in between our windows. Then once we get that out, then we're ready to put the I-beam in. The jackhammering's pretty much a two-guy job for Justin and Roman, so they got all of the big stuff out now. While they were doing that, I just pulled the skid loader up so that way they could have an easy place to throw the blocks without having to carry them way over there. But now that we got it down to this point, we need to get this last little bit cleaned out, and then we need to get all of this rugged roughness that we have on top of the monolithic concrete wall below gone. We want everything looking just like this, where it's nice and smooth. We don't want the bumps and all the ridges. And actually, this is added fill right here, so we need to take about 2-3 inches off of that. We need to get down to this part down below right here. Justin is now on the painstakingly slow part with his chisel and his hammer. He's getting a nice clean corner over there. He wants the bottom to be smooth, so he's gonna have to get this down a little bit too. Or no, you probably don't need to get that because that's out of the way.
That's out of the way.
But he's got to get that corner nice and smooth, and then we can leave the middle because this is the spot we are going to be cutting out. Now we need to get a measurement from this block wall over to where Justin is, because we're going to be putting our I-beam right here up against the top. So where we have our temporary beam on the inside, imagine that being slid over right here on the edge of the house, and instead of being wood, it's a big old metal I-beam. That's what we're going to do. Using the skid loader to lift the I-beam in is 1,000 times better than doing it by hand. But now that we got the beam up in place, we have the bottle jacks, which is pushing it up into the floor joists up on the inside. So our temporary support beam inside of there is not holding anything anymore because the big I-beam is being pushed up by the bottle jacks. This is now being the temporary support beam, which is actually going to be the permanent support beam. So now Justin and Robin are working on getting some measurements because they're going to take boards from the concrete down below, and then they are going to mount them up underneath of our beam, so that way it will end up holding this up, so the boards will end up taking the place of these blocks. Or not blocks, the jacks. Here we go. This gives a little bit better visual of what we got going on. Imagine that big beam up there is the I-beam, and then these poles that are going down on either end of the beam would be the pieces that Justin and Roman are making right now. So those are going to hold up all of the weight that the big old beam is holding up, and the beam is acting as a big bridge. In the case of that wood behind me, they call that a header. I don't know if they call that the same thing with an I-beam or not, but we're making a big old header. You may realize I am not at the house. I am in a field, and I don't know why this seems to happen every time, but on the hottest jobs and the least fun working environments, which I guess working outside isn't half bad because you can at least stand up and you can use equipment. But it seems like when these things happen, then we have farm stuff that needs to be done. So I got called out to farm work. Justin and Roman are going to continue working on ripping out those blocks and getting the little boards underneath of the I-beam. And then I think in the morning, I'm gonna get started digging the ramp actually down into the basement. I'm looking forward to that. But in the meantime, I am here. We are putting fertilizer. There's fertilizer in these big tanks on our corn. Nice and relaxing. Well, it looks like while I was off putting fertilizer on, Justin and Roman got all the little supports underneath the end of this I-beam. So now we have everything all open in between, and the I-beam is holding up all of the wall studs right above it, and the temporary one inside is still there, but it's not really doing anything right now. It looks like we have a bird flying around the basement. Oh boy. But I have the skid loader right here, so I'm gonna jump down in this hole and I'm gonna smooth this off a little bit. I got a big ridge that I need to get out, and then Justin is rolling up behind me right now with the backhoe, and we are going to mount that in here, and I'm gonna take the backhoe arm. I'm gonna do just a little bit of digging beside the wall, because if I come in with the skid loader and I start pushing into the soil to scoop it up, I could potentially be putting force on that concrete wall, and I think it would be strong enough I wouldn't break it, but I don't want to accidentally push too hard and then break out the side of the foundation wall or crack it or something. This thing is way more powerful than we give it credit for. So while we're digging beside the house, we're just gonna use the backhoe. But once we get done digging right beside the house, then for out here for the actual ramp part, we're using the skid loader, because I'm way faster with that. Oh, it's Justin's favorite animal, ants. Holy cow. Look at that, that is disgusting. Where are they going? Some good news, and I've got some bad news. Don't mind the jackhammering sound in the background. We'll get to that here in a second. The good news is we have a massive pile of dirt, and we have everything all dug out for our beautiful ramp. The bad news is when we look at our foundation wall, that is not solid concrete, which means we just opened up a medium-sized can of worms. When we look at the interior walls of the basement, these are solid concrete, nice and smooth, not jagged at all. It would lead one to believe that the outside of the basement wall looks exactly like the inside of the basement wall, but it doesn't. Back in the day, over 100 years ago, when they would have poured this basement wall, to save on having to hand mix so much concrete, any rock that they would have found out in a field or a piece of concrete from another job, bricks, whatever, you name it, that was hard, they threw down inside of the wall, and then they must have put a form on the inside, then poured their hand mixed concrete in there, and then this would have been on the outside, and it is held together by the concrete that they would have poured on the other side of the wall. So we have a little bit of a, I don't know the best way to say it, a little bit of a problem, because we wanted to just come in with a demo saw and be able to chop from the top all the way down, come over here, chop top down, and then just break out the piece in the middle, then we'd have our doorway. But they make demo saws that can go through a wall that's like 10, 12 inches thick, maybe, if you're cutting from both sides. Maybe you can go a little more. I don't really know. But these stick out a lot, and we don't have a demo saw that we're going to be able to cut through these with. So Roman's got his jackhammer in here. He's going to try to break some of these apart, see if we can get it a little bit more flush, kind of like this area, or like this spot would be a better example. And then hopefully if we get it in here, then we'll be able to come in with a demo saw and to be able to make our cuts. So that way we can actually knock out our wall. temporary beam anymore. It's all being held on our I-beam. Hey, found a sleeping mouse. He is sleeping so deeply, he's just stiff as can be. After doing a fair bit of jackhammering, Roman got a spot right here chunked out. So this is brought in a little bit. So now we can get the demo saw in here to cut. And then 7 feet over on the other side, he did the exact same thing. So we're gonna have a cut right here. You can see its little spot he has marked out on the top, and I just touched the sleeping mouse. That was kind of gross. But we're gonna have a cut there. We'll have a cut over here. And then everything here in the middle will be gone. And then we'll have a nice big wide open door to be able to get machinery in and out underneath of the basement. So that way in the future when we get to it, we will be able to start doing some demolition work on that floor and dirt work. And also get the big piles of dirt out of there. That's what we're trying to do right now actually. Get the big piles out of the basement. We're gonna be trying to control the dust as much as possible, so Roman's gonna be running the hose, and he's gonna be squirting that on the blade to try to keep the dust down, but we'll see how this goes. It's gonna get super dusty, just watch this. I'm not going to lie, when we first exposed the side of this foundation wall and saw that it was made up of all these rocks and these bricks and just the random assortment of whatever, I was kind of concerned about the integrity of the foundation walls. What honestly made me feel better was the fact that this has been standing for over 100 years and there was so much weight in the house before with all the lath and plaster and tile floors and all the mortar they had beneath that. I was like, you know, if it stood for over 100 years with no problems with all of that weight on it, we should be 100% fine because we are going to be putting a third of the weight back into the house. But another thing that's making me feel a lot better is the fact that we have cut on both sides as deep as this saw could go inside of the wall, and then Roman has been jackhammering and jackhammering and jackhammering and jackhammering, and you can hardly break off a piece after jackhammering on it for a minute straight. So if it's holding up that well, it's making me feel a lot better. Our plan of attack, now that jackhammering it apart really isn't working the best, is we're gonna try to jackhammer little slots on the side, and then we're gonna wrap that entire thing with a chain, and then we'll take the chain all the way up there to the flat. We'll back the telehandler over here, and then we'll pull on the chain with the telehandler and see if we can just pull that wall forward. Maybe it'll come out in one big piece. Look at that! We got concrete out! We no longer have a foundation wall! Take a look at the bottom of our ramp! You can now just walk right in. Now we did leave a little piece right here at the bottom, about 16, 18 inches tall. That way, if we get rain over here and the water starts coming down, it'll have a place that it'll catch instead of just simply rushing right in and literally flooding half of the basement. So in order for us to actually get in here with a piece of equipment, we are going to have to build a ramp coming down on the inside, and we are going to have to build a ramp going down on the outside. And good news for us, we have a ginormous pile of dirt. Now, for my whole life, the inside of the basement has always looked like smooth walls. And like I said earlier, I just assumed that the outside was also smooth. I thought the whole wall was just concrete. But when we dug down this morning and we discovered that the outside was rock, it made me really curious as to what the actual inside of the wall looked like. So check this out. They must have laid in the rocks. We feel like they dug. So basically they would have had a hole just like this. And we think they set all the rocks and stuff up against where they dug, where the actual dirt wall was. And so rocks would have been here, and then they would have put a wood form right here. So rocks, wood form, there would have been a little bit of a cavity in between, and they filled that cavity between with concrete. And that is apparently what they did, because looking at this, we got a big chunk of rock right here. This looks like a nice piece of granite. And then you can see the concrete line. So like here we only have 2 inches of concrete. But then you get to spots like this where there's like 4 or 5 inches. And then it has all these spots where it just bleeds into little cracks and crevices. So super interesting. We got a spot here, kind of thinner because we had the brick there. But then you get spots like this. Look how wide that is. Now, when we got started down in the basement and we were going to start ripping out the concrete floor, we realized, holy cow, we don't have a footer underneath of the foundation walls. So then we ended up digging things out just like this, putting the rebar in there, and then we poured footers. When we first discovered that, I was extremely curious as to how in the world did the house not settle if they did not pour a footer. But after seeing this on the outside with all these rocks, look at how much friction would be involved with this on the outside soil. So something like right here where the soil came underneath of it, if this did settle down over the years, then they would have had soil right under it, and that would have been helping hold up the bottom. So it would not have been holding just on the bottom of the wall. It also would have had a lot of help on the sides. I mean, just take a look at the piece that we cut out. This has a ton of big rocks sticking out of it, and there would have been a lot of area to be gripped upon on this thing. Big old chunk of concrete right here. Look, there's a big old piece of metal inside of that. Huh, that's probably why that one was so hard to break with the jackhammer. Give you a little size reference here based off my foot. These are 10.5 shoes. So about 2 feet thick right here, maybe in that thin spot, 11 inches or so. So definitely a nice thick wall. But there we go. We got the house supported with the I-beam. We got our ramp dug down. We got cut through our wall, and we now have an entrance point into the basement. So now we can get equipment in here and we can clean up our piles of dirt.